The marble floors of the Whitaker mansion gleamed under recessed lighting, polished to a sterile perfection. They echoed with the crisp click of Italian leather shoes as James Whitaker strode down the endless corridor, his every step precise, measured, mechanical. He passed faceless artwork curated by interior designers, bypassed rare sculptures imported from Florence, and didn't glance once at the panoramic skyline beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows that offered an uninterrupted view of the empire he'd built. It was his, all of it, every tower bearing his name, every property deal signed with his icy stamp of finality. His phone vibrated once. He answered without breaking stride. "Cancel the charity gala," he said, his voice clipped. "Cool. Double the donation. I don't want to attend." A voice stammered on the other end, his assistant. Rebecca, most likely. She was used to the sudden reversals. He didn't wait for confirmation before ending the call and sliding the device back into his suit pocket. Outside, the wind howled against the glass, November sharpening the air with its chill. Inside, silence reigned. No laughter, no chatter, no music. The mansion boasted over 12,000 square feet of real estate, 12 bedrooms, a marble atrium, a gallery of curated art, and not one framed photo of a loved one. Duke, his German shepherd, padded up beside him. James glanced down as the dog sat obediently at his heel, dark eyes fixed on him with a devotion James neither deserved nor returned often. He allowed himself one small gesture. His fingers brushed behind the dog's ear, a quiet offering of acknowledgement. "Just you and me again, boy," he murmured. In the kitchen, Mrs. Alvarez, his housekeeper of 15 years, was packing her things to leave for the evening. She moved quietly, respectfully, a ghost of domestic order. "Dinner's in the refrigerator," she said without turning. "Lasagna. Heated for 12 minutes. James nodded, already turning away. But something on the counter caught his eye, a small photograph, half tucked under her purse. He reached for it, a smiling woman surrounded by children, grandchildren, arms thrown around each other, cheeks pressed close, pure joy radiating from the image. "Is this your family?" he asked, before he could stop himself. Mrs. Alvarez smiled, a little startled by the question. "Yes, from my grandson's birthday last weekend. 5 grandchildren now." James's gaze lingered on the photo. Something in his expression flickered, a barely perceptible shift. Longing, regret. He handed the photo back without a word. "You should put that away," he said, his voice retreating into the familiar frost. "Lock up when you leave." Outside, Oak Ridge Park lay hushed beneath the early dark. Frost clung to iron benches and the skeletal arms of leafless trees. James walked briskly, hands in the pockets of his wool coat, Duke trotting ahead on the leash. This was his ritual. This and business. Nothing else. Until Duke stopped. James looked up. His dog stood still, ears perked, tail stiff, facing a bench half swallowed by shadows. "Duke, heel." The dog didn't move. Frowning, James followed the line of his gaze, and then he saw her. A small shape curled tightly on the bench, a tattered coat wrapped around thin shoulders, a fraying backpack serving as a pillow. She stirred, sensing movement. "This isn't a hotel," James called out, harsher than intended. The girl sat up quickly, blinking against the cold air. She couldn't have been more than 9. Her face was streaked with dirt, but her eyes were alert, composed. "I'm sorry, sir," she said, and her voice, though small, was steady. "I wasn't trying to cause trouble." James blinked. The formal tone unsettled him. "Where are your parents? Do you know what time it is?" She hugged her backpack close. "My mom said to wait here. She went to get work. She said she'd be right back." "When?" James asked, sharper now. 5 nights ago." The cold pressed and then not from the air, but from within. 5 nights. A child, alone, on a park bench in near freezing temperatures. And yet she sat with her spine straight, her hands folded over the backpack, as if she still believed someone would come. James didn't know what to say. Duke had already reached her, gently pressing his nose to her hand. She smiled at him, a real smile. It changed her whole face. "He doesn't like strangers," James said, almost to himself. "Dogs usually like me," she answered simply. James Whitaker, Lord of Towers, Titan of glass and steel, found himself strangely unsteady. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice quieter now. Lily Harper." She extended her hand, small and cold. With the solemn dignity of someone who had learned to act like an adult far too young, he hesitated, then took it. The car ride was quiet at first. James sat rigid behind the wheel of his Bentley, eyes flicking from the road to the small girl curled in the passenger seat. She hadn't spoken since climbing in, hadn't even looked at him. She just clutched her backpack like it held her entire life inside in. Maybe it did. Her fingers were raw where the cold had bitten them, knuckles pale against the frayed fabric. Duke sat proudly in the back, ears alert, tongue hanging out like this was the best night of his life. Traitor, James thought. The mansion loomed ahead, its sharp silhouette rising like a fortress on the hill. As the gates opened and a car rolled in, Lily finally looked up. Is this a hotel? James glanced at her. It's my home. She nodded, like that explained everything. It looked like a place where people wear slippers they never actually use. He almost smiled. Inside, the marble floors reflected their distorted shadows like ghosts walking side by side. Lily stepped cautiously across the threshold, her eyes wide, taking in the chandeliers, the silent staircase, the vastness of the space. It's very echoey, she said. James took her coat. It was barely more than a hoodie, wet, thin, useless. There's a guest room upstairs, he said. You can use it for tonight. I'm okay on the couch. You're not sleeping on the couch, he said, sharper than intended. She blinked, then nodded. He guided her to the smallest guest room, though still nearly the size of a downtown apartment. It had a plush bed, a fireplace, and pale blue walls that glowed softly under the dim light. It was beautiful, but sterile, empty of story. Bathrooms there, towels in the cabinet. She hesitated. I don't have pajamas. James stared for a moment. I'll find something. He left her with Duke, who lay beside her protectively as though he'd been doing it forever. Downstairs, James poured himself a scotch, hands trembling slightly. What was he doing? This wasn't him. He didn't do stray children and midnight rescue missions. He should have called the police. He should have dropped her at a shelter. But when she'd said, "My mom said she'd be right back," something had pierced through the fog of his well-controlled life. There was something to composed in her voice, to calm for a child alone. For nearly a week, he called Officer Martinez, found her, the officer said, surprised. Thank God. She's been on the watch list since a vendor at the soup kitchen reported a girl matching her description. No sign of the mother. Emma Harper uses different last names. Vanished 5 days ago. James frowned. She told Lily to wait in the park. Hell of a place to leave your kid. She didn't leave her. James said suddenly, I don't think she meant to. Either way, Martinez replied, we'll have to call social services in the morning. James hung up. He went back upstairs and knocked gently. Lily? She opened the door, wearing one of his old college sweatshirts that dwarfed her completely. Found this, he said. Thanks. She walked past him barefoot, her step soft against the gleaming floor. In the kitchen, Mrs. Alvarez's lasagna sat untouched in the fridge. James reheated a plate, then handed it to her at the oversized dining table, where she looked comically small. Swinging her feet under the chair, she ate slowly, savoring every bite. You know, she said between mouthfuls, my mom makes lasagna with lentils. She says meat's a luxury. He didn't know what to say. The child had been living on lentils and benches while he argued over millions in boardrooms. When did you last eat? He asked finally. She shrugged. Yesterday. Granola bar. Her eyes met his, clear, brave. She was not begging, not afraid, just surviving. You shouldn't be out there, he said. It's freezing. She said she'd come back. Her voice softened. She never lies to me. James stared at the girl, something strange forming in the pit of his stomach. The quiet certainty in her voice unnerved him more than any business loss ever could. That night, Lily curled into the guest room bed like a leaf folding in on itself. Duke lay pressed against her side, as though he'd found something in her worth protecting. And maybe he had. James stood in the hallway, staring at the closed door. For years, silence had been his companion, but tonight, something about the quiet unsettled him. Back in his study, he tried to focus on the quarterly reports, the Asia deal, the architectural mock-ups, but his eyes kept drifting back to the hallway. Then he saw it, her backpack, left on the leather bench by the door. He knew he shouldn't, but he picked it up. It was light. The light. Inside he found a plastic water bottle, the granola bar wrappers, a small pencil case. and a notebook. The notebook was worn, the pages curled at the edges. He opened it and froze. Drawings, pages filled with simple pencil sketches, a dog beside a girl, a bench under a tree, a woman smiling beside a girl, both of them with wind in their hair, and then a figure in a suit, standing under a city skyline. Below it, in a careful, childlike scrawl, "The man who found me." James closed the notebook slowly, his heart beating just a little too fast. Something wasn't right. This girl hadn't stumbled into his world by chance. Something he didn't know yet was tying them together. And for the first time in years, James Whitaker felt afraid. The morning came slowly, with a haze of winter sunlight spilling through the grand windows of the Whitaker mansion. It cast long shadows over James's mahogany desk, where untouched reports lay beside the notebook he'd found in Lily's backpack. He hadn't slept. His coffee had gone cold twice, but he hadn't noticed. He was still staring at the final page of her drawings, the one with the suited man, standing stiffly under a skyline made of jagged pencil lines. "The man who found me." The words hit harder than he cared to admit. Duke padded into the office, first, followed by Lily in James's oversized sweatshirt, her bare feet soft against the marble. She looked more awake now, but her eyes were older than they had any right to be. "Is it okay if I feed Duke?" she asked, not like a guest, but like someone used to asking permission for the smallest kindnesses. James nodded. "Kitchen's through there. Mrs. Alvarez should be arriving soon." Lily disappeared down the hall, and James picked up his phone. He didn't call the authorities. Not yet. He dialed a different number, one he hadn't used in months. "Sarah." "Chen," the voice answered briskly. "Talk." "It's James Whitaker." A pause. "Well, either you're dying or you need something cleaned up." "Neither. I need you to find someone quietly named Emma Harper. Might be using an alias. Possibly missing, possibly injured." Sarah's voice shifted into focus. "You don't usually chase ghosts, Whitaker. This one chased me." He muttered. He gave her everything Lily had told him. The park, the missing mother, the girl alone. She said her mom went looking for work 5 days ago. Never came back. "Where's the girl now?" "She's here, with me." Silence. Then, "Jesus, James, did you kidnap a child?" "She followed my dog into my car." "Close enough." Sarah exhaled slowly. "I'll start digging. Employment records, hospitals, shelters, arrest logs. If she's out there, I'll find her." James hung up. He found Lily at the kitchen table, legs swinging as she spooned cereal into her mouth. Duke sat beside her, clearly converted to full-time guardian status. Mrs. Alvarez entered moments later, stopping mid-step when she saw the girl. "Mr. Whitaker, we had an unexpected guest," James said. "She'll be staying for a while." Mrs. Alvarez blinked. She didn't ask questions. "Would you like pancakes, sweetheart?" "Yes, please." James left the kitchen, heart pounding. He didn't recognize himself anymore, and yet, somehow, he didn't hate it. Hours passed in a blur. He canceled meetings, skipped the board review. Lily sat in his office drawing in silence. It felt strange, domestic, almost dangerous. By early afternoon, Sarah called back. "I found her." James stood so quickly he knocked his chair backward. "She's alive. She's in County General. Brought in 5 nights ago. Construction site accident. Severe head trauma. No ID on her. She was admitted as a Jane Doe." James's mouth went dry. "Where?" Sarah hesitated. "Meridian Construction, East Side site." Something cracked open in James's chest. "That's one of mine." "Yeah, I figured." She was working off books as a cleaner. Site wasn't up to code. A shelf collapsed. She's been unconscious ever since. James was already grabbing his coat. "Wait," Sarah said. "That's not all." "What?" "Her real name isn't Emma Harper. It's Emily Hartman." The ground beneath him vanished. He knew that name. Knew it like a whisper he'd tried to forget. College. She had been the only person who ever made him forget to check his email. Who dragged him out to see sunsets. Who told him love was more than comfort, it was risk. James had left her for a job on the other side of the country, never looked back. Now she was here, broken, alone, and her daughter was in his house. His hand clenched around the phone. "Are you sure?" I ran the image from the hospital through a facial recognition. Sweep. Cross-matched with student archives, DMV records, employment apps. She applied to Whitaker Development twice, rejected by HR both times. "You never knew." No. James whispered. I had no idea. James, Sarah's voice softened. She changed her name a year after you broke up, right after Lily was born. His knees went weak. That little girl might be yours? Silence pulsed between them. Do you want a DNA test? Sarah asked. James didn't answer. He was already halfway out the door. The hospital corridors were sterile, white, endless. Machines beeped. Nurses moved in hushed rhythms. James felt 100 miles out of place in his designer coat and $1,000 shoes. Emily's room was at the end of the hall. He hesitated outside the door, then stepped in. She looked smaller than he remembered, pale, bruised, tubes fed into her arms. Monitors tracked her heart, her brain. Her hair was longer now. Dark waves spilling across the pillow. Her lips were cracked, her skin wan. But he knew her, even now, even like this. A nurse glanced up. You family? James hesitated. Yes, he said. I'm family. He approached the bed slowly, terrified of what he might feel and what he might not. But when he saw the faint scar on her wrist, the one he remembered from late-night stories, and spilled wine in the delicate curve of her fingers, a floodgate broke inside him. Emily. He whispered. No response. He sat. He took her hand. Cold, fragile. I found Lily, he said, voice thick. She waited for you every night. On a bench, in the cold. Still nothing. His thumb brushed her knuckles. She's brilliant and brave. She draws everything she sees. She thinks I'm a little scary, but she likes my dog. He paused, looking down. She's my daughter, isn't she? The monitor beeped steadily. James leaned closer. If you can hear me, I'm sorry for leaving, for not knowing, for every stupid, selfish decision that kept me away. The silence was crushing. Then her fingers twitched. So faint it could have been a dream. Emily? Her eyelids fluttered, just once. The nurse rushed in, calling for the doctor, but James didn't move. He just kept holding her hand, not knowing what would happen next, but knowing, at last, what truly mattered. He had a daughter, and the woman he had once loved lay broken because of a world he had built. And that world was about to change. The mansion had never felt so small. Not in size, its halls still sprawled like a map of cold luxury, but in silence. It was no longer a sanctuary of stillness. It was now a house haunted by breath, by tiny footsteps, by questions James had no idea how to answer. Lily had fallen asleep with Duke curled at her feet. She was getting used to the room, the sheets, the warm dinners, the soft lighting, but not the truth. That still waited in the dark corners like a storm no one had named. James stood at the massive window in his study, watching snow collect along the hedges outside. The city glowed below his city, as everyone always said. Towers he'd built, companies he'd swallowed, a kingdom of steel and silence. It had always felt like power. Tonight, it felt like guilt in glass form. Behind him, Lily's notebook sat open on the desk. He hadn't meant to look again, but something kept pulling him back. New pages now. A drawing of Duke wearing a crown. A sketch of Emily in a hospital bed with a heart floating above her head. And then James. This time, not alone. She had drawn him sitting at the table, a fork in one hand, a frown on his face, and beside him, Lily, smiling up at him. Below it, in tiny lettering, Mr. Whitaker is trying. He exhaled, unsteady. The door creaked. Lily stood there, still in the oversized sweatshirt. She didn't look like a guest anymore. She looked like she belonged, and that terrified him. Can't sleep? He asked. She shook her head. Duke was kicking me. He managed to smile. He's a blanket thief. She climbed into the armchair across from him, pulling her legs up under her. You didn't tell me where my mom is. James stiffened. The question hung in the air, like a blade. She's in the hospital. He said carefully. There was an accident at work, a construction site. Lily nodded slowly, to calm for a child. Is she okay? She's asleep, he said. But the doctors think she can hear us. I've been talking to her. Silence. Then Lily said, You don't talk like a rich person. James blinked. What does that mean? You say things like they're wrapped in glass, she explained. Like if someone touches them wrong, they'll shatter. He didn't respond. I think you're scared, she added. He stared at her, stunned. Of what? She didn't blink. Of people. James leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Your mother. She's not just someone I used to know. Lily tilted her head, waiting. She was special. A long time ago. Lily picked at a thread on the armchair. You still think she is? He nodded. You left her, didn't you? The air left his lungs. Yes, he said finally. I was young, stupid. I thought success would fix everything, and did it? No. Lily nodded as if she already knew. Are you going to leave me too? The question came soft, fragile. James felt the ground shift. No, he said, his voice raw. Not now. Not ever. And for the first time in decades. He meant it without a single caveat or condition. The next morning, the press came. A black SUV sat parked outside the mansion gates. Telephoto lenses aimed through the iron bars. A woman from Channel 5 called his assistant demanding a comment. James ignored it all. Instead, he called Officer Martinez. She's waking up, Emily. Her fingers moved. That's good news. Martinez replied. We'll update child services. You'll need paperwork, custodial guardianship, emergency care documentation. Handle it, James said. And give me whatever I need to make sure Lily stays here. There was a pause. Then, you're in deep now, huh? I was always in deep, James said. I just didn't know it. That afternoon, Sarah Chan arrived. She carried a manila folder that seemed to hum with electricity. Her face was unreadable. Timeline's clean, she said, handing in the file. Emily Hartman, pregnant 9 years ago, changed her name after your breakup. No father listed on the birth certificate. She tried contacting your company several times, emails, job applications, even a handwritten letter. James felt like the floor beneath him had cracked. I had all that filtered back then, he muttered. I know, Sarah said. You built walls so thick that not even the truth could get through. He opened the file. There, tucked into the corner, was a photo. Emily, holding a baby wrapped in a thrift store blanket. Behind her, a sign barely visible. Whitaker Development, Affordable Housing Initiative. She had stood in front of his name, holding their daughter, and he hadn't seen it. He hadn't seen anything at all. You need to tell her, Sarah said. I will. No, I mean Lily. She's not a stray dog you brought in. She's your daughter. James closed the folder. I'm waiting until Emily's awake. I want to tell them together. Sarah nodded, satisfied. She'll forgive you, she said. Quietly, eventually, James didn't answer. He wasn't sure he deserved it. That evening, he took Lily to the hospital. She held his hand. Without being asked, Emily looked the same still. Pale, suspended between worlds. Hi, Mom, Lily whispered, stepping up to the bed. It's me. I waited like you said. I didn't move. James watched, heart pounding. She found me, he said. She saved me, just so you know. No movement. Then Emily's eyelids fluttered. Barely. James froze. Do it again, he whispered. Lily leaned closer. Me and Duke are staying with Mr. Whitaker. He feeds me weird pasta, but he's learning. Emily's hand twitched. James's knees buckled. The monitor beeped faster. Nurses rushed in. He stepped back, heart thundering, as the doctor called her name again and again, and then, like sunlight cutting through mist, Emily's eyes opened. She blinked, once, twice, then her lips parted. Lily? Her voice was dry, barely audible, but it was there. Lily gasped. Mom. Emily tried to sit up. The machines protested. James stepped forward, the words burning behind his teeth. The truth clawing its way out, but Emily spoke first, eyes locking onto his. You found her, she said, a flicker of something between fury and relief dancing in her gaze. I did, James replied, but she found me first. He took a breath. He was done hiding. Emily, she's my daughter, isn't she? And in that room full of machines, with a child holding her breath and a man holding his shame, the world waited for an answer that would change them all. James had faced billion-dollar negotiations with colder hands. Now, standing in the stark white of the hospital corridor, his palms were slick with sweat, his breath tight in his chest. Behind the door, Emily Hartman, alive, conscious, watching. Him with eyes that hadn't changed since she was 20, had not yet answered the question that had set the room still as a grave. She's my daughter, isn't she? He'd asked it softly, but the weight of it had fallen like thunder inside. Lily sat beside the hospital bed, holding her mother's hand, oblivious to the fissure forming between the two adults. That shaped her world. Emily hadn't looked away. She didn't cry. She didn't gasp. Instead, she said nothing. That silence was worse than any yes or no. I deserve the truth, James said now, his voice low, shaking. Emily finally blinked, slowly. Deliberately, I was going to tell you, she whispered. Once, he stepped forward, unable to help himself. When she looked down at Lily and brushed a hand across her daughter's cheek before she was born. I called. I wrote. Your assistant said you were too busy, that your personal life didn't follow you to New York. James felt like she'd slapped him. He remembered, vaguely, an assistant he'd instructed to filter out distractions, clean out the remnants of his past so he could become someone powerful, unburdened. I never saw anything, he said. You weren't looking, she replied, voice sharper now. You wanted clean slates, James. I just gave you what you asked for. His throat ached. And the name? He asked. Why Harper? Why not your own? Emily's lips pressed together. Because I didn't want Lily growing up with a name that came with a shadow. He felt the words like knives. Does she know? He asked, motioning toward the girl still chatting softly to Duke at the foot of the bed. Emily shook her head. No, not yet. I told her father was away, working, that he used to love her mom, but needed to go change the world. James turned, walked to the window. I built a world without you, he said, bitterly, and I never noticed it was empty until now. The silence between them was no longer cold. It was raw, human. Decades too late, Emily leaned back against the pillows, wincing as pain shot through her body. You want her now, she said. You want a daughter you didn't know you had, but you don't just get to walk into her life and claim her. James turned. His voice cracked. I don't want to claim her. I want to be worthy of her. Emily stared at him, the defenses in her eyes weakening just a little. Then you'd better start fast, she said, because she's already starting to love you. That night, back at the mansion, James sat alone in the dining room. A plate of untouched pasta sat steaming before him. Across the table, Lily's empty seat faced his. She'd gone to bed early, exhausted after the hospital visit. He could still hear her voice. She smiled when I said Duke misses her. I think she's going to be okay. And then the whisper, you make her happy, even though she tries to hide it. He dropped his fork. The clatter echoed like thunder through the marble halls upstairs in the guest room. Lily's backpack sat slightly open. Something glinted inside. A photograph. James reached in. It was folded, creased with age. The image showed a much younger Emily standing in front of a chain-link fence. A baby swaddled in a striped hospital blanket in her arms. Behind her, a partially constructed building bore a large banner, Whitaker Development, Affordable Living. James stared at his name. She had brought their child to one of his sites. Maybe hoping he'd be there, maybe hoping someone would recognize the connection. He turned the photo over. In faded ink, written in Emily's script, I brought her to meet the man who built the world. He dropped into a chair like gravity had tripled. The next day brought the media storm. James's assistant, Rebecca, stormed into his office mid-meeting, her face white. We have a problem, she said, holding up the latest edition of the Business Chronicle. On the front page, ruthless real estate tycoon secretly raises daughter of ex-girlfriend. In shocking twist, the photo beneath was grainy, but unmistakable. James standing outside the hospital, with Lily on his hip and Duke at their side. He snatched the paper. Who leaked this? No one here. Probably someone at the hospital. Or one of the reporters. Camping outside your house. James threw the paper aside. Rebecca watched him carefully. What do you want to do? He stood, slowly, straightened his tie. Let them talk, sir. Let them all talk, he said. And when they do, I'll be the one who answers. That afternoon, James held a press conference on the steps of his headquarters. The crowd was a frenzy of questions and camera flashes. He stepped to the podium with no notes. I recently learned I have a daughter, he said plainly. Her name is Lily. She's extraordinary. And until last week, I didn't know she existed. A hush fell. I'm not telling you this for sympathy or spectacle. I'm telling you because it's time I took responsibility not just for her but for the life I've lived, and the people who've been hurt by it. He looked out at the crowd. I built towers, but I never built homes. I created profit, but I never created safety. That ends now. He reached into his coat and pulled out a file. This is the Harper Foundation. It's named after Lily. It will be privately funded by me and dedicated to emergency relief for single parents, safe housing, job placement, and legal aid. A murmur rose. And this, he continued, holding up another document, is a new internal policy across every Whitaker property, mandatory safety inspections, living wage standards, and direct lines for employees to report conditions anonymously. He stepped back from the microphone. No applause, no cheers. But not a single camera turned off. The silence was respect. That evening, when he walked through the mansion doors, Lily ran into his arms. Mom said I could stay another night, she said breathlessly, and she wants your lasagna. Again, James laughed, lifting her easily. I'll try not to burn it this time. She grinned. You probably will. Behind her, Mrs. Alvarez gave him a knowing smile. As Lily skipped toward the kitchen, James stood still. The house no longer echoed like it used to. It was filling with stories. It was finally starting to feel like home. Snow dusted the branches of Oak Ridge Park like powdered sugar. The playground, once a hollow monument to absence, now shimmered under a soft winter glow. The bench, the one where Lily had spent 5 nights curled in fear and faith, had been sanded, repaired, and lacquered. At its center, a bronze plaque now gleamed, where lost souls find their way home. James Whitaker sat on that bench now, gloved hands clasped between his knees, watching the sun set behind the tree line. Duke lay at his feet, half asleep, his muzzle dusted with gray. Nearby, Lily spun its slow circles with her arms outstretched, red coat flaring behind her like a cape. Her laughter broke through the frosted air, chasing away the memory of the silent night she'd spent here alone. Behind her, Emily Hartman approached, slower now, but stronger than she had been weeks ago. She wore a charcoal coat, her cheeks pink from the cold, and her eyes never once left her daughter. Careful, Emily called. I'm flying, Lily shouted, spinning faster. James stood to meet Emily, brushing snow off the bench beside him. You said you'd never sit here again, he noted quietly. Emily looked down at it. It's not the same bench anymore. He nodded. Neither are we. They sat, shoulder to shoulder, watching Lily twirl. She thinks she's in a movie, Emily said with a soft laugh. The brave little girl who changed a billionaire's heart. She didn't change it, James said. She cracked it open and showed me what was missing. Emily went quiet. You know, she still thinks we're going to live in different houses forever, she said. James took a breath. Isn't that what we're doing? Emily turned to him slowly. Is it what you want? He met her gaze. What I want is to wake up to the sound of her brushing her teeth too loudly, and you pretending to be annoyed about it. I want Tuesday night dinners where nobody agrees on what movie to watch. I want messy, inconvenient, terrifying love. She blinked, lips parting. I'm not asking out of guilt, James continued. I'm not asking because it's the right thing to do. I'm asking because I've never wanted anything this much, not even when I built my first tower. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the ring. Not a massive diamond, not a showpiece. Simple, elegant, honest. Emily's breath caught. Here, she whispered. Now. He smiled. This is where we began, isn't it? She stared. At the ring, then at him. You were an arrogant, selfish bastard. I still am, he said. But now I'm trying to be your bastard. A laugh burst from her, sudden, genuine, cracking the ice of 1,000 unshed tears. James took her hand. Emily Hartman, will you marry me? Not because we have a daughter, but because I'm not me anymore unless I'm with both of you. Tears welled in her eyes. From behind them, Lily shouted, just say yes, Mom. We already voted. Emily shook her head, laughing and crying all at once. You asked her first. She's the boss, James said. You know that. Emily nodded, breath trembling. Then yes, of course yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit as if it had been waiting there all along. Lily ran up and threw her arms around them both, laughing, crying, breathless with joy. Duke barked once, then trotted around them in triumphant circles like a best man with a tail. Weeks passed. The snow grew heavier. The holidays came. The guest house was no longer used. Emily and Lily had moved into the main house full-time. It was no longer a mansion. It was a home. Framed photos replaced cold modern art. Lily's drawings filled the hallway. A new dinner table, slightly too small for the space, but perfect for family, sat at the heart of the kitchen. One evening, James stood before his board of directors. The old guard watched him warily. This company was built to dominate, James began. To own, to control. But that's not what it will be anymore. He slid a thick document across the table. From now on, we build what people need, not just what they can afford. A pause. You're shifting the entire development strategy? One exec asked, stunned. I'm rewriting it. James said, you're welcome to stay and help, or leave and sell. I won't stop you, but this company now stands for something. What exactly? Another asked. Skeptically, James looked them each in the eye. Redemption, he said. We build redemption, and they did. The Harper Center opened 3 months later. It featured after-school programs, subsidized childcare, mental health support, and a women's shelter. It bore no logo, just a single bronze quote near the doors. Everyone deserves a way back. 1 year later, on the anniversary of the night, he met Lily. James stood in front of a new project site. This one would be a school. Lily held his hand. Now taller, older, brighter, Emily stood beside them, her engagement ring flashing in the sun. A second band waiting quietly in James's pocket. He looked down at Lily. You remember that bench? She grinned. The one with the plaque. Yes. What about it? He smiled. I think it saved my life. She leaned into him, resting her head against his arm. No, Dad, she said softly. I did. And she had. Because sometimes the smallest lost soul doesn't need saving. Sometimes she saves you, and nothing is ever the same again.